The Federal Reserve announced two big changes for 2022. One includes 3 interest rate hikes. What can we expect? Welcome back to the Industry Leader Update. Inflation is at a 39-year high and it appears not to be transitory. As a result, last Wednesday, the Federal Reserve announced they will be reducing or tapering their bond purchases at twice the rate as previously planned, and also will be increasing or hiking interest rates 3 times in 2022, all in the effort to stem runaway inflation. The Federal Reserve has 2 mandates: maximum employment and stable prices, meaning moderate and stable inflation. Keynesian economics argued that the government could tax and spend its way into full employment. This wrote the former president of the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis in his paper in 2005. If that economic theory sounds eerily familiar, it should, considering that our government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic and the massive increase of our money supply and its consequences. Now, we have faced the monster of inflation before. In fact, in 1979, the new incoming Federal Reserve Chairman, Paul Volcker, started to dish out some tough love, really tough love. His solution to runaway inflation in the late 70s and early 80s was not only to increase interest rates, but to also reduce the money supply. By 1981, Volcker had raised the Fed funds rate to a staggering 20%. The result was one of the deepest economic recessions since the Great Depression and the eventual curbing of inflation. What's the Federal Reserve's chairman and the Board of Governors plan? Well, the first step is to rapidly reduce the purchases of Treasury or mortgage bond purchases, which have been holding down long-term interest rates for some time. The second is to increase interest rates, perhaps as early as March. Consequently, 2 questions come to mind. Will the Federal Reserve's countermeasures slow inflation, or will it continue to erode our purchasing power? Second, how could this impact the reverse mortgage lending market? First, inflation may not slow if supply chain bottlenecks persist. China's shutdown of factories along the Yangtze River Delta just last week in response to the Omicron variant only stand to compound supply chain shortages. If initial rate hikes do not slow rising prices, the Fed may opt for more severe deflationary measures with additional or more severe interest rate hikes, and that certainly would flatten any economic recovery. Second, what does this mean for the reverse mortgage lending industry? Now, depending on the magnitude of interest rate increases, home buying demand will certainly soften. Now, this could lead to a plateau of home appreciation nationally and also price reductions in overheated markets. Now to the HECM. The constant maturity Treasury rate and the SOFR, upon which adjustable federally insured reverse mortgages are keyed, is certain to rise. Now, the secured overnight finance rate is published each day by the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. It shows the cost of overnight transactions or swaps between borrowers and lenders, which then are collateralized or backed by Treasury securities. As the cost of those securities increase, so will the overnight swap rate. So what can be done as the spigot of easy stimulus money and loose monetary policy come to an end? First is to eliminate debt as quickly as possible, or more realistically, restructure how it's held. Now, for a consumer, this could mean converting their high balance credit cards into a 12 or 15-month zero interest rate transfer offer to help accelerate the pay down of their principal balance on those cards. On a larger scale, older homeowners may want to evaluate their exposure to both inflation and high interest rates, and also consider converting their debts into a reverse mortgage to help them avoid the worst thing you can have in retirement, payment shocks, as their minimum payments do spike. While a HECM's balance certainly does increase and compound, cash flow is usually king when one is retired and on a fixed income. Now is the time to discuss inflation and increasing interest rates with your potential borrowers. And by doing so, you could be throwing them a much-needed financial lifeline before the storm hits. Now, what are your thoughts? Please share your comments in the comment section below, and also kindly share this video on your Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter profiles. We also have a YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. This week, we look back at the 13th anniversary of our weekly podcast, Heck'em World Weekly. You can listen at heckemworld.com or subscribe and listen on iTunes. And that's it for us this week. Thanks again for joining us, and have a very happy and safe Christmas. Cheers.